We are back on PALS TV. So this is we're in totally unprecedented territory, though. We have a total twofer today. So we have AOTL coming back on to do an amazing presentation. We get to hang out with them twice today. So and we have Mara joining us as a co-host over there. So how are the two of you?
Wonderful, thank you.
It's been a long time since we've gotten to chat with you guys. So how's the last hour and a half been?
Oh, it was a really long hour. Oh wait, one of our guys has a Polaroid camera, and last week I taught them all how to draw a Polaroid camera, and no one on PALS TV had ever heard of a Polaroid camera.
So I saw an interesting tweet the other day, and it was a person said their youngest son asked why we say hang up the phone. And he's like, it just dawned on me. He's like, we are old.
Oh my God. That is so funny. Yeah, it's only gonna get worse.
Yep.
But
yep, I agree.
I was teaching them perspective and stuff, and we took this awesome picture of Phil. It's kind of blurry, but glary. But he's eating from his organ bag. So that's what we did in the last hour.
Very nice.
Eating from organs, it's fine.
They're not real organs, if anybody doesn't know, Phil.
Disclaimer. We're not eating organs. Well, I invited Mara to co-host with me because she has a wonderful voice. She's an excellent reader, and she actually loves hanging out with all of you. I don't know why. I'm just kidding. We love being with you guys, and we were excited to fill in for Phil today. Anywho, we are going to share our screen so you guys can read along with us. Oh, weird. Oh, it's pausing it. Okay, can you guys see the screen of words? Give me a thumbs up. Oh, is everyone frozen? It'll be back. Okay, I got a thumbs up. Okay. So, I believe we're reading A Study in Scarlet by Sherlock Holmes. Or not by Sherlock Holmes, but a Sherlock Holmes novel, per se. So, Mara, Phil had told me that we are starting with many mumbled blessings. So, would you like me to go first, or do you want to go first?
That sounds like a sentence I should read.
You should read? I love it.
See.
All right, do you want me to follow along with my mouse, or do you feel like you got it?
That would be better.
All right.
My hands are kind of cool.
Cool. Sorry.
That's better.
All right, ready?
Thank you.
And here we go.
With many mumbled blessings and protestations of gratitude, the old crone packed it away in her pocket and shuffled off down the stairs. Sherlock Holmes sprang to his feet the moment that she was gone and rushed into his room. He returned in a few seconds, enveloped in an ulster and a cravat.
I have no idea what that is.
I'll follow her, he said hurriedly. She must be an accomplice and will lead me to him. Wait up for me. The hall door had hardly slammed behind our visitor before Holmes had descended the stair. Looking through the window, I could see her walking feebly along the other side while her pursuer dodged her some little distance behind. Either his whole theory is incorrect, I thought to myself, or else he will be led now to the heart of the mystery. There was no need for him to ask me to wait up for him. for I felt that sleep was impossible until I heard the result of his adventure.
Wow. Phil likes to describe every paragraph he reads. We are probably not going to do that today.
I don't know what's going on.
We're a little late to the story, but it already sounds riveting. I mean,
It's an adventure and a mystery.
And a mystery. Right, we're just diving deeper. Okay. It was close upon 9 when he set out. I had no idea how long he might be, but I sat stolidly puffing at my pipe and skipping over the pages of Henry Murger's Vie de Bourbon. 10 o'clock passed, and I heard the footsteps of the maid as they pattered off to bed. 11, and the more stately tread of the landlady passed my door, bound for the same destination. So they're all going to bed. That's a long way to say they're all going to bed. I mean, they used to write differently back then, huh?
Yeah.
It was close upon 12 before I heard the sharp sound of his latchkey. The instant he entered, I saw by his face that he had not been successful. Amusement and chagrin seemed to be struggling for the mastery, until the former suddenly carried the day, and he burst into a hearty laugh.
I wouldn't have the Scotland Yarders know it for the world, he cried, dropping into his chair. I have chaffed them so much that they would never have let me hear the end of it. I can afford to laugh, because I know that I will be even with him in the long run.
What is it then? I asked.
Oh, I don't mind telling a story against myself. The creature had gone a little way when she began to limp and show every sign of being footsore. Presently, she came to a halt and hailed a four-wheeler which was passing. I managed to be close to her so as to hear the address, but I did but I need not have been so anxious, for it sang out for she sang out for she sang it
Out loud enough.
aloud. So she sang it out loud enough to be heard at the other side of the street. Drive to 13 Duncan Street, Houndsditch, she cried. This begins to look genuine, I thought, and having seen her safely inside, I perched myself behind. That's an art which every detective should be an expert at. Well, away we rattled and never drew rein until we reached the street in question. I hopped off before we came to the door and strolled down the street in an easy, lounging way. I saw the cab pull up. The driver jumped down and saw him open the door and stand expectantly. Nothing came out though. When I reached him, he was groping about frantically in the empty cab and giving vent to the finest assorted collection of oaths that ever I listened to. There was no sign or trace of his passenger, and I fear it will be some time before he gets his fare. On inquiring at number 13, we found that the house belonged to a respectable paper hanger named Keswick, and that no one of the name either of Sawyer or Dennis had ever been heard of there.
What's the name of that? Which one? Adam. Oh, yeah, I've been holding this.
Sorry, guys,
for
pause.
Like 5 minutes.
Hey, Greg, is Adam out of the restroom or? Just go. Thanks, Clay. No, he's not in there. All right, sorry guys, sorry, restroom break. Okay. You don't mean to say, I cried in amazement, that the tottering, feeble old woman was able to get out of the cab while it was in motion without either of you or the driver seeing her?
Old woman he damned, said Sherlock Holmes sharply. We were the old woman to be so taken in. It must have been a young man, an active one too, besides being an incomparable actor. The get-up was intimidable.
Mm-hmm.
He saw that he was followed, no doubt, and used this means of giving me the slip. It shows that the man we are after is not as lonely as I imagined he was, but has friends who are ready to risk something for him. Now, doctor, you are looking done up. Take my advice and turn in.
I was certainly feeling very weary, so I obeyed his injunction. I left Holmes seated in front of the smoldering fire, and long into the watches of the night I heard the low, melancholy wailings of his violin, and knew that he was still pondering over the strange problem which he had set himself to unravel. So they thought it was an old lady coming out of this car, but it was actually an active young man. So now their whole story switched, right? That's what I'm gathering.
Flipped.
I don't know what the doctor has to do with anything, so hopefully
I thought they already turned in.
hopefully you and I will find out. I know, they like went to bed and then they woke up all of a sudden.
Like, what woke them up? All this stuff that's happening?
Could you imagine being like in this though?
Yeah. In Wishbone, maybe.
Oh yeah, Wishbone. All right.
New
Chapter. Can you read Roman numerals?
No, I hate
Roman numerals. Me too. Chapter
that
something.
name, though.
Tobias Gregson shows what he can do.
I love the name Tobias. Just a little side note for y'all.
Oh, Tobias is a great name. The papers next day were full of the Brixton mystery, as they termed it. Each had a long account of the affair, and some had leaders upon it in addition. There was some information in them which was news to me. I still retain in my scrapbook numerous clippings and abstracts bearing upon the case. Here is a condensation of a few of them.
The Daily Telegraph remarked that in the history of crime, there had seldom been a tragedy which presented stranger features. The German name of the victim, the absence of all other motive, and the sinister inscription on the wall all pointed to its
Perpetration
by political refugees and revolutionists. The socialists had many branches in America, and the disease had, no doubt, infringed their unwritten laws and been tracked down by them. After alluding airily to the
them Garrett.
Okay, I'm not going to try that.
Aquatofana, Carbonari, the Marchone State, Brinvilliers, the Darwinian theory, the principles of Malthus, and the Ratcliffe Highway murderers.
The article concluded by admonishing the government and advocating a closer watch over foreigners in England.
Interesting. That was a mouthful. All right. The Standard commented upon the fact that the lawless outrages of the sort usually occurred under a liberal administration. They arose from the unsettling of the minds of the masses and the consequent weakening of all authority. The deceased was an American gentleman who had been residing for some weeks in the metropolis. He had stayed at the boarding house of Madame Charpentier in Torquay Terrace, Camberwell. He was accompanied in his travels by his private secretary, Mr. Joseph Stangerson. The two bid adieu to to their landlady upon Tuesday the 4th and departed to Euston Station with the avowed intention of catching the Liverpool Express. They were afterwards seen together upon the platform. Nothing more is known of them until Mr. Drever's body was, as recorded, discovered in an empty house in the Brixton Road, many miles from Euston. How he came there or how he met his fate are questions which are still involved in the mystery. Nothing is known of the whereabouts of Stakerson. We are glad to learn that Mr. Lestrade and Mr. Gregson of Scotland Yard are both engaged upon this case, and is confidently anticipated that these well-known officers will speedily throw light upon the matter. I'm going to start doing an English accent, I've decided.
Yes!
Okay.
The Daily News observed that there was no doubt as to the crime being a political one. The
The despotism.
the despotism.
The S is before the P. So.
The despotism.
There you go.
And hatred of liberalism, which animated the continental governments, had had the effect of driving to our shores a number of men who might have made excellent citizens were they not soared by the recollection of all that they had undergone. Among these men there was a stringent code of honor, any infringement of which was punished by death.
Mm-hmm.
Every effort should be made to find the secretary,
Stangerson.
and to ascertain some particulars of the habits of the deceased. A great step had been gained by the discovery of the address of the house at which he had boarded, a result which was entirely due to the acuteness and energy of Mr. Gregson of Scotland Yard.
Interesting. Sherlock Holmes and I read these notices over together at breakfast, and they appeared to afford him considerable amusement.
I told you that whatever happened, Lestrade and Gregson would be sure to score.
That depends on how it turns out.
Oh, bless you. It doesn't matter in the least. If the man is caught, it will be on account of their extortions. If he escapes, it will be in spite of their extortions. Its head I win, and tails you lose. Whatever they do, they will have followers.
Oh, can you read French?
Oh.
Let me try. Un se trouve toujours un plus sot qui l'admire. I don't know if that's right, but I tried, you guys.
Sounded awesome.
What on earth is this? I cried, for at this moment there came the pattering of many steps in the hall and on the stairs, accompanied by audible expressions of disgust upon the part of our landlady.
It's the Baker Street Division of the Detective Police Force, said my companion gravely, and as he spoke, there rushed into the room half a dozen of the dirtiest and most ragged street Arabs that ever I clapped eyes on.
Attention! Cried Holmes in a sharp tone, and the 6 dirty little scoundrels stood in line like so many disreputable statues. In future, you shall send up Wiggins alone to report, and the rest of you must wait in the street. Have we found it, Wiggins?
No, sir, we ain't, said one of the youths.
I hardly expected you would. You must keep on until you do. Here are your wages, he handed each of them a shilling.
Now off you go, and come back with a better report next time.
He waved his hand and they scampered away downstairs like so many rats, and we heard their shrill voices next moment in the street.
There's more work to be got out of one of those little beggars than out of a dozen of the force, Holmes remarked. The mere sight of an official-looking person seals men's lips. These youngsters, however, go everywhere and hear everything. They are as sharp as needles, too. All they want is... That's not organization.
I think it is because they don't do Z's. Sometimes in England they do S's.
Organization?
Yeah. So Sherlock Holmes has gathered a bunch of, I guess he's calling them beggars on the street, because most people probably, yeah, they would be scared to talk to policemen, and they're in disguise.
Yeah.
Cool. Sherlock Holmes. All right. Do you know where we just left off?
Yeah.
This one?
Is it on this Brixton case?
Oh. Is it on this Brixton case that you are employing them, I asked?
Yes, there is a point which I wish to ascertain. It is merely a fact of time. Hello. We are going to hear some news now, with a vengeance. Here is Gregson coming down the road with beatitude written upon every feature of his face. Bound for us, I know, yes, he is stopping. There he is.
There was a violent peal at the bell, and in a few seconds the fair-haired detective came up the stairs 3 steps at a time and burst into our sitting room.
My dear fellow, he cried, wringing Holmes' unresponsive hand, congratulate me. I have made the whole thing as clear as day.
A shade of anxiety seemed to me to cross my companion's expressive face.
Do you mean that you are on the right track? He asked.
The right track? Why, sir, we have the man under lock and key.
And his name is?
Arthur Shropshire, Sub-Lieutenant in Her Majesty's Navy, cried Gregson pompously, rubbing his fat hands and inflating his chest.
Sherlock Holmes gave a sigh of relief and relaxed into a smile.
Take a seat and try on one of these cigars, he said. We are anxious to know how you managed it. Will you have some whiskey and water?
I don't mind if I do, the detective answered. The tremendous exertions which I have gone through during the last day or two have worn me out. Not so much bodily exertion, you understand, as the strain upon the mind. You will appreciate that, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, for we are both brain workers.
You do me too much honor, said Holmes gravely. Let us hear how you arrived at this most gratifying result.
The detective seated himself in the armchair and puffed complacently at his cigar. Then suddenly he slapped his thigh in a paroxysm of amusement.
The fun of it is, he cried, that the fool Lestrade, who thinks himself so smart, has gone off upon the wrong track altogether. He is after the secretary Staggerson, who had no more to do with the crime than the babe unborn. I have no doubt that he has caught him by this time.
The idea tickled Gregson so much that he laughed until he choked.
And how did you get your clue?
I'll tell you all about it. Of course, Dr. Watson. This is strictly between ourselves. The first difficulty which we had to contend with was the finding of this American's
Antecedents?
Antecedents. Is that like your descendants? Like your ancestors?
I think antecedent means like what's his motive, I think.
Oh, interesting.
Or I'm not really sure. I'll look it
Some,
up.
some people would have waited until their advertisements were answered, or until parties came forward and volunteered information. This is not Tobias Gregson's way of going to work. You remember the hat beside the dead man?
All right, pause. And
I'm just trying to understand what's going on.
I think this man thinks, oh, a thing or event that existed before or logically precedes another.
So
A person's ancestry. Yeah, you're right. Good job. Okay, so they think they caught this guy, but I think this guy just sounds a little pompous.
And
Like maybe he really didn't catch, like maybe he's just waiting to catch him. I don't know.
he's just talking.
Yes, said Holmes by John Underwood and Sons, 129 Camberwell Road.
Gregson looked quite crestfallen.
I had no idea that you noticed that, he said. Have you been there?
No,
Ha! Cried Gregson in a relieved voice. You should never neglect a chance, however small it may seem.
to a great mind, nothing is little, remarked Holmes
Sententiously.
sententiously.
Well, I went to Underwood and asked him if he had sold a hat of that size and description. He looked over his books and came on it at once. He had sent the hat to a Mr. Drebber, residing at the Charpentier's boarding establishment, Torquay Terrace. Thus I got at his address.
Smart, very smart, murmured Sherlock Holmes.
I next called upon Madame Charpentier, continued the detective. I found her very pale and distressed. Her doctor was in the room. To an uncommonly fine girl she is, too. She was looking red about the eyes, and her lips trembled as I spoke to her. That didn't escape my notice. I began to smell a rat. You know the feeling, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, when you come upon the right scent, a kind of thrill in your nerves. Have you ever heard of the mysterious death of your late boarder, Mr. Enoch J. Drebber of Cleveland? I asked.
The mother nodded. She didn't seem able to get out a word. The daughter burst into tears. I felt more than ever that these people knew something of the matter.
At what o'clock did Mr. Drebber leave your house for the train? I asked.
At 8 o'clock, she said, gulping in her throat to keep down her agitation. His secretary, Mr. Stangerson, said that there were two trains, one at 9:15 and one at 11. He was to catch the first.
And was the last which you saw of him?
A terrible change came over the woman's face as I asked the question. Her features turned perfectly livid. It was some seconds before she could get out the single word, yes. And when did it come? It was in a husky, unnatural tone.
There was silence for a moment, and then the daughter spoke in a calm, clear voice.
No good can ever come of falsehood, mother, she said. Let us be frank with this gentleman. We did but see Mr. Drebber again.
God forgive you, cried Madame Charpentier, throwing up her hands and sinking back in her chair. You have murdered your brother.
Arthur, would rather that we spoke the truth, the girl answered firmly.
You had best tell me all about it now, I said. Half confidences are worse than none. Besides, you do not know how much we know of it.
On your head be it, Alice, cried her mother, and then turning to me, I will tell you all, sir. Do not imagine that my agitation on behalf of my son arises from any fear lest he should have had a hand in this terrible affair. He is utterly innocent of it. My dread is, however, that in your eyes and in the eyes of others, he may appear to be compromised. That, however, is surely impossible. His high character, his profession, his
Antecedents.
antecedents would all forbid it.
Your best way is to make a clean breast of the facts, I answered. Depend upon it. If your son is innocent, he will be none the worse.
Perhaps, Alice, you had better leave us together, she said, and her daughter withdrew. Now, sir, she continued, I had no intention of telling you all this, but since my poor daughter has disclosed it, I have no alternative. Having once decided to speak, I will tell you all without omitting any particular.
It is your wisest course, I said.
Mr. Driver has been with us nearly 3 weeks. He and his secretary, Mr. Staggerson, had been traveling on the continent. I noticed a Copenhagen label upon each of their trunks, showing that had been their last stopping place. Staggerson was a quiet, reserved man, but his employer, I am sorry to say, was far otherwise. He was coarse in his habits and brutish in his ways. The very night of his arrival, he became very much the worse for drink, and indeed after 12 o'clock in the day, he could hardly ever, he said, to be sober. His manners towards the maid servants were disgustingly free and familiar. Worst of all, he speedily assumed the same attitude towards my daughter Alice, and spoke to her more than once in a way which, fortunately, she is too innocent to understand. On the occasion, he actually seized her in his arms and embraced her, an outrage which caused his own secretary to reproach him for his unmanly conduct.
Interesting. No idea. But why did you stand all this? I asked. I suppose that you can get rid of your boarders when you wish.
Mrs. Charpentier blushed at my pertinent question. Would to God that I had given him notice on the very day that he came, she said, but it was a sore temptation. They were paying £1 a day each, 14 pounds a week, and this is the slack season. I am a widow, and my boy in the Navy has cost me much. I grudged to lose the money. I acted for the best. This last was too much, however, and I gave him notice to leave on account of it. That was the reason of his going.
Do you want to read? I can read the long one.
Okay, well.
My heart grew light when I saw him drive away. My son is on leave just now, but I did not tell him anything of all of this, for his temper is violent, and he is passionately fond of his sister. When I closed the door behind them, a load seemed to be lifted from my mind. Alas, in less than an hour, there was a ring at the bell, and I learned that Mr. Driver had returned. He was much excited, and evidently the worse for drink. He forced his way into the room where I was sitting with my daughter and made some incoherent remark about having missed his train. He then turned to Alice, and before my very face proposed to her that she should fly with him. You are of age, he said, and there is no law to stop you. I have money enough and to spare. Never mind the old girl here, but come along with me now, straight away. You shall live like a princess. Poor Alice was so frightened that she shrunk away from him, but he caught her by the wrist and endeavored to draw her towards the door. I screamed, and at that moment my son Arthur came into the room. What happened then, I do not know. I heard oaths and then confused sounds of scuffle. I was too terrified to raise my head. When I did look up, I saw Arthur standing in the doorway laughing with a stick in his hand. I don't think that fine fellow will trouble us again, he said. I will just go after him and see what he does with himself. With those words, he took his hat and started off down the street. The next morning, we heard of Mr. Drever's mysterious death. You think he killed him?
Yeah,
You think so?
yeah.
Can't mess with his sis like that. Mm-mm.
No. This statement came from Mrs. Chapetier's lips, with many gasps and pauses. At times, she spoke so low that I could hardly catch the words. I made shorthand notes of all that she said, however, so that there should be no possibility of a mistake.
It's quite exciting, said Sherlock Holmes with a yawn. What happened next?
When Mrs. Chapetier paused, the detective continued. I saw that the whole case hung upon one point. Fixing her with my eye in a way which I always found effective with women, I asked her at what hour her son returned.
I do not know, she answered.
Not know?
No, he has a latchkey and he let himself in.
After you went to bed?
Yes,
When did you go to bed?
about 11.
So your son was gone at least 2 hours?
Yes,
Possibly 4 or 5?
yes.
What was he doing during that time?
I do not know, she answered, turning white to her very lips.
Of course, after that, there was nothing more to be done. I found out where Lieutenant Chapetier was, took 2 officers with me, and arrested him. When I touched him on the shoulder and warned him to come quietly with us, he answered us as bold as brass. I suppose you are arresting me for being concerned in the death of that scoundrel Drebber, he said. We had said nothing to him about it, so that his alluding to it had a most suspicious aspect.
Very, said Holmes.
He still carried the heavy stick which the mother described him as having with him when he followed Drebber. It was a stout oak cudgel.
Yeah, sure. um, what is your theory then?
Well, my theory is that he followed Drebber as far as the Brixton Road. When there a fresh altercation arose between them, in the course of which Drebber received a blow from the stick, in the pit of his stomach, perhaps, which killed him without leaving any mark. The night was so wet that no one was about, so Chapetier dragged the body of his victim into the empty house. As to the candle, and the blood, and the writing on the wall, and the ring, they may all be so many tricks to throw the police onto the wrong scent.
You want to read this one? I'll read the longer one.
Okay. Well done, said Holmes in an encouraging voice. Really, Gregson, you are getting along. We shall make something of you yet.
I flatter myself that I have managed it rather neatly, the detective answered proudly. The young man volunteered a statement in which he that, after following Trevor some time, the latter perceived him and took cab in order to get away from him. On his way home, he met an old shipmate and took a long walk with him. On being asked where this old shipmate lived, he was unable to give any satisfactory reply. I think the whole case fits together uncommonly well. What amuses me is to think of Lestrade, who had started off upon the wrong scent. I am afraid he won't make much of why, by Jove, he is the very man himself. I think that it's too good to be true. Like, I think Sherlock Holmes keeps smirking and smiling because,
He knows that.
yeah, like, I think, like, this case isn't actually solved.
Oh, it's a cold case.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like he just said, it's a little too easy. Like, it's uncommonly, you know?
Oh,
So I'm just predicting here. This is my prediction.
huh. Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Should we read one more and then we'll stop?
The rest of this.
Yeah, let's read the rest because we're almost done.
It was indeed Lestrade who had ascended the stairs while we were talking, and who now entered the room. The assurance and jauntiness which generally marked his demeanor and dress were, however, wanting. His face was disturbed and troubled, while his clothes were disarranged and untidy. He had evidently come with the intention of consulting with Sherlock Holmes, for on perceiving his colleague, he appeared to be embarrassed and put out. He stood in the center of the room, fumbling nervously with his hat and uncertain what to do. "This is a most extraordinary case," he said at last, "a most incomprehensible affair."
Ah, you find it so, Mr. Lestrade, cried Gregson triumphantly. I thought you had come to that conclusion. Have you managed to find the secretary, Mr. Joseph Stangerson?
"The secretary, Mr. Joseph Stangerson," said Lestrade gravely, "was murdered at Holliday's private hotel about 6 o'clock this morning."
Oh,
Why is everybody getting killed?
everyone's getting killed in Sherlock Holmes. I have no idea. This is crazy. Okay, we stopped at this chapter, chapter blah blah blah, light in the darkness. All right, we're gonna stop our share. This is riveting stuff, you guys.
Yes.
It's too good to be true, almost. Wouldn't you say, Jonah?
I agree. I think Sherlock knows that. I think there's more to this. I'm looking forward to it. And I guess the power went out here, so now I'm sitting in the dark. So it was kind of eerie to listen to Sherlock Holmes set up all the detectives in the dark. So I'm looking forward to next week, though. So that's all we have for our book club, but we will be back. We're going to be going to a library in Newark, so I'm looking forward to that. So everybody stick around. Golf clap to Mara and Bianca for doing all those spot on English accents and all the fun reading of a very classic story. So I will let you guys take yourselves off of mute. I'll be back at the top of the hour. Until then, have fun. I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun. Oh my goodness. Hi, Dad.